Drugs. What comes to your mind when I say this word drugs? Well, if I asked this question a couple of months ago, I'm sure I've got answers like ganja, cocaine, weed, hemp, cannabis, and all other illegal drugs that are available in this world. And right now, at this moment, when we say drugs, only things that crosses our mind is the film industry or Deepika Padukone, Ragini Dwivedi, and of course Riya Chakraborty, and all the drama that is happening around people in the film industry. After the shocking news that came out about Sushant Singh Rajput's death, the only thing they had to say is that he killed himself after a party that he had at his place the previous night. And once the postmortem report came out, it was clear that there were no signs of struggle or any bruises or marks on his body that indicates that he hanged himself. And due to this, the court ordered an investigation around Sushant Singh Rajput's death to find out the actual reason or the cause of death. In the meantime, Sushant Singh's father filed a police complaint against Riya Chakraborty and her family, stating that they've been demanding money in the pretense of love. When the police department was investigating about the relationship between Sushant Singh and Riya Chakraborty, they had to go through the conversation history and the call logs as well. And when they were going through the conversation history, they came to know that there were a lot of mentions about drug usage, and there was also proof that Riya has purchased drugs and she has paid for it as well. On these grounds, Riya was arrested on the 8th of September for procuring illegal drugs and consuming them as well. Well, as usual, we Indians reacted in a very happy way and we celebrated the event like as if the death of Sushant Singh Rajput was brought to light and the actual criminal was caught and is now brought to justice. Well, no. Anyway, on the other side of the story, Kangana Ranaut came up and told that Sushant Singh Rajput killed himself because of nepotism, and 4 of his movies was dropped lately because of the nepotism, and that was the reason why he got depressed, and that is the reason why he committed suicide. And the way or the course the case took after a few months, she also stated that drug usage is what causes depression. Well, that's a very debatable point because I've made a whole video about depression and the causes of it and its effects on human body as well. So I'll tag it on the top. Make sure you watch that as well to have a better understanding about depression and its causes. Well, as per the users of drugs, they say that it only enhances the emotion that they consume it in and it does not cause depression necessarily. And if you ask me who these users are, they are definitely people who were addicted and then came out of it and are now clean. And if you ask me where I found them, well, a lot of articles and blogs and a lot of videos that are available on YouTube. So you can just search on YouTube or Google and you'll find a lot of articles related to people who have come out of depression or who have come out of the whole drug abuse and are now clean and are having a whole different life, or a second life we could call them. When we say drugs, what kind of drugs are we talking about? Well, we are talking about cocaine here, and the reason being all the artists and the actors who have been currently arrested because of this drug usage or abuse are highlighted because of the usage of cocaine, and they have admitted it themselves. Anyway, let's see why drugs are illegal, and if we make it legal, what are the things that we need to keep in mind, or if we should even make it legal. First things first, human body works on a central nervous system, which means we are functioned and our body functions only because of our brain and the spinal cord in our body. And these two are the things that are responsible for the actions and the reactions that we show to things that are happening around us. Well, let's take about actions or reactions. So if there's a stimulus that we're getting as an input through our sense organs, our brain needs to send a signal to that part of the body to give a reflex to the situation or the stimulus. Well, 7th standard biology, but we as humans tend to forget a lot of important things about ourselves as we grow up, and we start concentrating on making a lot of money or feeling pleasure as we grow up. So I had to bring it up. I'm sorry. We all experience different emotions on a daily basis: happiness, sadness, pleasure, lust, etc. And have you ever wondered why we feel these emotions and how our brain works when we are feeling these emotions? Well, to give you a brief understanding, hippocampal is the middle part of the brain, and different chemicals like dopamine, noradrenaline, or serotonin secreted in our brain are reacting with this middle part of the brain, which is hippocampal or hippocampus, and these reactions results in the emotions that we express to people or we express from our body. Dopamine plays a major role in us feeling happiness or pleasure, and usage of any form of drug, be it synthetic or it could also be consumption of cannabis or weed, it increases the amount of dopamine secreted in our brain. And this increased flow is has nowhere to go. Let's say, for example, you are at a deadline and you need to complete your work really fast, and there's no way you can do it in an organized way. So what you do is you do the tougher bits first and you do the easier bits in the later part, and somehow you finish it within the deadline and complete your work and submit it. But once you're done, the first thing you'll say is, oh my god, my head is really aching and I need to have a cup of coffee. And some people tend to have a cigarette. So the reason why we do this is because our brain is under a constant influence of one particular chemical because we were stressed during the pressure of work, and we need to release that. And the way to neutralize that chemical is by taking a different chemical into our body or into our system. So the pressure or the stress that you feel during your work, or let's say when you're running on a deadline, is pretty natural, and that's pretty much how our brain is supposed to react to situations. But imagine the same thing happening when you're inducing an artificial chemical into your body, and it is creating an unnatural amount of dopamine or any chemical for that matter, and your brain has nowhere to dump those chemicals, so it causes a lot of traffic in your neural system. For example, there's a beautiful saying in Kannada. They say, Manegondu mara, urigondu kadu, which means plant a tree for every house, and you'd have a jungle or forest for every city or town. Well, forget about trees. We need to bring a rule where we need to have only one automobile or one car for a house, because we have multiple cars for every single house, and every single person wants to use their own locomotive and not want to take public transport to reduce their time, because we are running in a progressive world and we want things to happen faster. And what happens when we have limitless number of cars or automobiles for that matter? It causes a lot of traffic. Every place you go to has traffic. You go to gullies, there's traffic. You go to main road, there's traffic. You go to highways, there is traffic in the toll gates during the weekends for more than a kilometer. That's how crazy the traffic is. The similar traffic happens in your brain when you consume alcohol or when you consume these artificial drugs, and there's no way your brain can process all those chemicals at the same time and organize it and keep you organized. Instead, it would make you do naive things and crazy things that you wouldn't even think of in your right senses. Continued consumption of any form of drug or any chemical or synthetic drug would increase the cravings in your body. And it is basic human tendency, or it is how our brain works. The more we do something, the more we get used to it, and the more we are used to it, the more we tend to do more of it. I hope that makes sense. There is a naturally occurring part of our brain called paracingulate sulcus, or PSC. This part of brain is a very thin membrane, and the size of the membrane differentiates from person to person, and it's not induced or it cannot be altered as we grow or by any medications. It is naturally occurring. And this membrane of your brain is what helps you differentiate between reality and imagination or hallucination. And this is the part of the brain that increases your memory and that differentiates the memory power. And people who have a bigger PSC would tend to remember more things and score more in a memory test or a contest. And the people with thinner PSC would tend to get lesser score. Well, the reason I'm talking about PSC is because the continued consumption of any narcotic drugs would make you or make the PSC dysfunctional, and it would not let you or make you understand the difference between hallucination and reality. And it also reduces the memory power in your brain. So I'm sure we all must have seen somebody in our life who has been a victim of drug abuse, and that person tends to forget very simple things of life. Like, it could be anything that they could be doing on a regular basis and they would forget it, and it should be an important thing that you would have asked them to do and they would naturally tend to forget it. And people think that it's cool, but it's not. So to answer the statement that we had in mind in the beginning of this video, drugs cause depression. Well, it is kind of right, but not always the cause. There are a lot of reasons why people can get depressed, and that statement was really naive to say drugs are the cause of depression. Alright, moving on. There was a movement that happened in India called the Great Legalization Movement a couple of years ago, and there were around 7 states where there was a rally that they conducted to legalize cannabis in India. And I also had a conversation with one of these girls who was representing this non-profit organization, and she was pretty enraged about the fact that I was not supporting them, and she tried to give me the advantages and disadvantages of cannabis and its usage, but I was still against the commercial release of it, and I have my own reasons for that. Before we get to the reasons, one of the things that stoners tell and justify their act is that getting stoned or being under influence of weed or cannabis is going to make a world a better place, and it would keep people in peace, and there would be no violence happening around the world, and it's more like a white pigeon. I hate to break it to you, not everybody thinks like you, and they're not as civilized as you are. People are wild, people's thoughts are ferocious, and they think like animals. The only reason most of the citizens are roaming freely without, becoming a criminal is because they are well aware of the consequences of their actions, and they know that if they do something wrong, there is a law that is going to punish them. Well, under the influence of any form of drug, they're not going to be in right senses. And I'm not just saying this in a narrow-minded thought that cannabis or any usage of drug is going to cause any kind of a rupture in people's head, but I'm telling this based on statistics. Based on a lot of articles that I referred for this particular video, it is pretty evident that the amount of crime or the number of crimes have increased substantially before and after the legalization of weed. And USA recently legalized weed, and there has been more reports of property crime and domestic violence inside USA after the legalization of weed. Well, there's your proof, and if you want to get accurate information, Google it yourself. Are all drugs bad? Is weed bad? Is it so bad that we should not legalize it? Should we ignore all the medicinal benefits that it has just because it makes people crazy? Well, I'll be making a video about that. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to make sure you get instant notification and watch the videos coming forward. That's it for today. I'm Manish. This is Mr. 62. Catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.